It is a very peculiar night in Paris in 1911. Former prefect Raymond is enjoying a cabaret performance by showgirl Nicole, while Ferdinand is going home after an evening spent playing cards. He stops in front of a statue to relieve himself but gets scared when suddenly, some weird golden lights appear above him. This is an optical illusion caused by Professor Joseph, an expert on ancient Egypt who has developed telepathic techniques after lots of research. By using these powers from his home, he manages to hatch a 136-million-year-old dinosaur egg at the museum, from which a pterosaur comes out. The two of them end up having a psychic connection, so for the first few minutes, every move by the pterosaur is copied by Joseph too. Then the pterosaur flies out of the museum through the ceiling to fly above Paris, and all this could have been seen by Inspector Albert if he hadn't fallen asleep. Then, Raymond takes Nicole with him in his car to spend time together, which is suddenly attacked by the pterosaur, causing it to fall into the river. Ferdinand witnesses the whole deal, and Albert is woken up to take care of this emergency. Meanwhile, André, a young scientist that works as an assistant at the Jardin des Plantes, is trying to write another letter to his crush, famous writer and journalist Adele, who he met during a book signing. Adele is not currently in Paris, her publisher sent her to Peru, but Adele always does whatever she wants, and ends up going to Egypt instead. There, she hires a group of local men to help her find the tomb of Ramesses the Great, unaware that one of them runs from the area to snitch on her. Once they get inside the tomb, they put the pieces of an ancient parchment together for Adele can decipher to find the secret door. A black goo made of oil comes out of this door, so when the men turn against Adele because they want the treasure for themselves, Adele doesn't mind stepping back. She knows the goo is a trap, and only a few seconds pass before one of the men ends up on fire. The group admits they need Adele's guidance, and after she figures out another one of the puzzles, they finally find the room with the mummy and the treasure. What Adele is looking for is not Ramesses himself, but his personal doctor, and she gets to open the sarcophagus while two of the men are punished for their attempt at stealing gold. One is shocked by the necklaces he puts on, and the other falls through a hole that suddenly appears on the ground. Adele's inspection of the mummy is interrupted by her nemesis, Professor Dulavold. Thanks to the information from his spy, he's come prepared with a bunch of soldiers to capture her. Confused, Dulavold wonders why she even wants an old mummy. Thus Adele explains her sister is ill and this ancient doctor is the only one that can help her. Of course, he needs to come back to life first, and to achieve that, Adele is planning to use Joseph's published research. Dulavold finds the whole idea laughable and, after stealing the book, he makes the soldiers take her back to the first room to execute her, since that is the punishment for foreign looters. When asked about her last wish, Adele asks for a cigarette, so when Dulavold comes closer to share one, she steals the lighter and hits him on the groin. Then, she pushes Dulavold into the mummy wrapping machine and runs into the goo tunnel, dropping the lighter to start a fire behind her which stops the soldiers from following her. Once she reaches the mummy room, she jumps into the sarcophagus and pushes it into the grave, breaking through the ground and falling into a river that takes her out safely. Now she can row her way back to the city while the men free Dulavold, who swears revenge. Back in Paris, the police are interrogating Ferdinand, but they don't believe him when he says he saw a dinosaur and that the former prefect could have an affair with a showgirl. However, soon more information arrives and the bodies have been confirmed to be Nicole and Raymond, so Albert kicks Ferdinand out before telling his officers to keep this information private to avoid a scandal. This doesn't work out though, and in the morning, every newspaper in the city is talking about the pterosaur and Raymond's affair. The president hears about this as well and quickly sends orders to his cabinet to take care of the mess to avoid panic in the population, choosing to pretend not to have seen the pterosaur flying by his window. He wants the results by the end of the week, but each politician that receives the order passes it to another man on a rank below until it reaches Albert, who is given only 24 hours. In the meantime, André visits his friend Professor Menard at the museum and finds the broken egg, quickly guessing it was hatched from the inside. Albert comes over as well, but he is incredibly dull-witted and doesn't put two and two together. To get him off his back, Menard sends him to see Joseph, who specializes in the era that the pterosaur is from. Speaking of Joseph, he's charmed the pterosaur with raw meat and is now hiding it in his apartment. When Albert and the cops arrive, the dinosaur stays behind a curtain while Joseph tells the officers everything he knows about pterosaurs. Albert steals Joseph's breakfast and takes a bite from a hard egg. This angers the pterosaur and causes it to thrash the apartment before flying out. As a result, Joseph gets arrested. Back to Adele, she arrives in Paris with the mummy and takes it to her apartment after lying to her editor, saying she did visit Peru and the box contains a huge pipe. Once she gets home, she quickly dismisses the nurse that has been taking care of her sister and ignores all the letters André has sent her because they can be her reading material during bath time. Then she checks on her sister Agathe, who is comatose in bed with a hatpin through her head. She promises to heal her soon, but since she has lost the book, she'll have to find Joseph so he can do the ritual himself. On her way out, she bumps into André, who has brought another letter. letter. Adele adds it to the pile on the table, and that's when she finally sees the newspaper saying that Joseph will be sent to the guillotine. Andre tells her what prison Joseph is in, and Adele rushes there disguised as his lawyer. Joseph explains he can't use his telepathic technique to escape because he's using all his power to control the dinosaur and stop it from killing again, so Adele will have to find another method to get him out. Sadly, at that moment the real lawyer arrives, and Adele is kicked out, forcing her to try many different costumes with the hope to reach Joseph again. First, she pretends to be the cook and hides the real cook's badge inside Joseph's plate, but of course, the real cook tells the officers of the theft, and the plan is busted. Next, she tries a nun and a nurse, but both times she's discovered as well. The disguise that finally works is a guard, but by the time she makes it to Joseph's cell, it's too late. He's been transferred to get him ready for the execution. Meanwhile, Albert welcomes Justin, a famous big game hunter that has been hired to hunt the pterosaur, and he plans to start by studying the creature's behavior. For this, they go to the Eiffel Tower, but all they achieve is getting pooped on by the dinosaur. Justin recognizes the excrement as made of mutton, which means their next stops are every place in the city with sheep in it, from farms to the jardin de plantes. The next morning, Adele goes to see the president, who remembers her fondly because of an old interview they had together. Adele points out he has always been against the death penalty and asks him to pardon Joseph, but the president only tells her he'll think about it. Their conversation is interrupted by the pterosaur, who is flying down, so Adele tackles the president to the ground and the dinosaur kidnaps the dog instead. The guards see this as an attack on the president and kick Adele out. In the jardin de plantes, Albert and Justin are dressed up as sheep, waiting for the pterosaur to show up. The one that finds it, however, is Andre, who did some research and shows Menard the results. He has put some pieces of the eggshell and a bunch of meat in a quiet place, and the pterosaur has come with the dog, thinking it is its nest. Back to Adele, she tries to explain to the police that Joseph is the only one that can control the pterosaur, but they don't believe her and kick her out as well. She returns home and, after apologizing to her sister, she takes a bath and finally reads Andre's letters, finding the answers she's been looking for. Adele rushes to see Andre, thanking him with a kiss for his genius, and makes him take her to the dinosaur nest. There, she befriends the pterosaur by singing to it and gifting it her feather scarf. Once the creature allows her to come closer, Adele climbs on it and tames it into giving her a ride. The pterosaur flies Adele to the local prison and uses its claws to snatch Joseph out of the guillotine, causing the executioner to lose his head instead. While they fly back to the nest, they are seen by Justin, who rushes after them while Albert stays behind sleeping. Joseph gets to reunite with his old friend Menard, but this sweet moment is interrupted by Justin, who shoots the pterosaur and causes Joseph to get hurt as well because of their psychic connection. Furious, Menard steals the hunter's weapon and chases him through the park for having gotten in the way of science. Joseph doesn't have much time left because if the pterosaur dies, so does he, and they can't exactly take a dinosaur to the vet. Adele leaves Andre in charge of keeping the dinosaur alive for as long as possible while she takes Joseph to her apartment in order to finally do the ritual to revive the mummy. Using Adele's antique collection to create a summoning circle, Joseph employs all that is left of his telepathic powers to bring the mummy back to life, but he and the pterosaur lose their lives in the process. The ritual works and the mummy, called Patmosis, begins talking and moving. He is thankful for having been brought back, but he's afraid he has bad news. He is a doctor in physics, not medicine, which means he can't help Agath. He's still curious about what happened to her though, so Adele tells him the whole story. Agath and Adele have always been very competitive and had never played serious tennis matches together, only friendlies. One day, they couldn't keep in their fire any longer and their match became quite aggressive. Adele strikes the ball extra hard, hitting Adele and causing her to fall on top of the hat pin and pierce her head. Patmosis truly regrets not being able to help and wishes he could have met Joseph, whose abilities were so strong that he probably awoke the dead in a radius of 2 kilometers. Remembering an ad in the newspaper about a mummy exhibition in the Louvre, Adele gets an idea. She puts Agath in a wheelchair and dresses Patmosis in a suit before leaving the house, which allows Patmosis to approach Ferdinand and give him a spook. The group goes to the museum and gets inside after Patmosis uses his own powers to open the lock and put all the guards to sleep. In the exhibition, they begin opening all the sarcophagus to find Ramesses' doctor. Now all the servant mummies are free, they release Pharaoh Ramesses as well, and he accepts to help Agath as thanks for having been revived. The pharaoh's actual doctor removes the hatpin and prepares a salve with Ramesses' entrails to cover the hole. Then Ramesses kisses Agath not because it's necessary but because it is tradition. Afterward, Ramesses takes all his servants with him to tour the city while Agath wakes up. The sisters finally reunite, and Ramesses decides the Louvre needs a pyramid outside. The sight of the mummies makes Ferdinand pass out again and reaches the newspapers the next morning. While the president calls Albert to take care of this new threat, Andre tries to visit Adele but finds Agath. Seeing as Adele won't come back for a few weeks, Andre gifts the flower flowers to Agath instead, and the two of them end up having tea together. Meanwhile, Adele is boarding a ship to finally have a holiday while Dulavold secretly sends some of his men after her. Their future is uncertain because the ship they are boarding turns out to be the Titanic. In the Jardin des Plantes, Menard continues to chase after Justin, only to get arrested by Albert and his officers. Justin's relief is short-lived however, because a pair of guerrillas have their eyes on him.